Hi everyone, welcome to Life Edge, because life just doesn't have to be mediocre. I am joined today by my good friend, Dr. Susan Nash. How are you, Susan?
Great. And I'm happy to announce we have a wonderful guest, a visionary, and a true pioneer.
Two Susans today.
Yes.
Two Susans. And by the way,
Hello from another season.
yep, and I'm Rick Zanotti, and here we go.
This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation. Digital learning development, media development, corporate video, management consulting, and more. Visit us at www.relate.com. Thanks.
And we are back. And Susan, would you like to do the honor?
Absolutely. I'd like to introduce Susan Morrice, who is with Belize Natural Energy. And oh, what a wonderful history. But at any rate, let's just start at the beginning. How did you get interested in geology?
When I was a little girl, or a wee girl, as they'd say in Ireland, where I'm from, our families used to go up to the Giant's Causeway, which is actually one of the seven wonders of the world in Northern Ireland. And we used to have picnics on the rocks. And I've got to say, you can hardly wonder at how come I'm a geologist, because the rocks were so amazing. They were like big, still are, big columns. And I used to jump around them in amongst the sea, the ocean. And that's when I found out that could be a real job. I decided that's what I was going to be. And so I went to university and studied geology, or natural sciences actually, which was maybe broader than geology, which has been terribly helpful. But one of the keys is that it allows one to keep one's imagination alive. Because, as you know, Susan, you only have a couple of dots to deal with, and you've got to make up what's under the earth. And so your imagination can almost run wild.
That's so true. Now, were there fossils in those rocks?
In the basalts, no. They were tertiary basalts, so there were no fossils there.
Oh.
But for my Trinity degree, I did a study on what's called a Benioff zone, a plate margin, where the Ordovician deep water sediments were in a scrape zone, and they were chock full of graptolites, which were very gregarious. And people thought that was very good for me, because I am.
Oh, that's interesting. So, you've been a pioneer and a visionary in several different ways. You started exploring for oil and gas in Ireland, and then in Belize. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that trajectory?
I think it probably even goes back to when I was 11, when we were going on those picnics. We went to Donegal for a picnic. And I say this because training is a building block of what I've been doing. And I got a lift with my two cousins to the sweetie shop, as we would say. And it's a candy shop in Donegal. And it was with an old priest. And the two cousins jumped out, and I said, "Can I ask you a question?" The priest said yes. And remember, I'm from Belfast, so there was a bit of trouble going on then. Anyway, I said, I think there's a bit of God inside everybody, but nobody seems to want to talk about it. And he smiled in a very old gentlemanly smile and said, be very pleased and hold that knowing for the rest of your life. And that, I would say, set me up for a life full of I wouldn't even call it pioneering, because when you really have that sense of life's force with you, it's tremendous how you can take adventures and be bolder than maybe others who were held back by a little bit more doubt. And so that's sort of a beginning setting. Then went to Trinity and hired by an American company and brought to Denver, where I am today. Actually, in we call it the Adobe Ranch. It's about 15 acres just in the Littleton area of Denver. We've got a donkey, a horse, 2 horses, 5 dogs, and cats and bunny rabbits and Canadian geese, and 12 pelicans landed on the lake. And I think they came from Belize.
Well, that explains why you have such a jubilant personality. Aside from having a little bit of God in you and everyone else, you also have all the perfect animals you need to make you very happy. And that's part of it. Yeah, they're telling people nowadays, get a dog, get a cat, get dogs, get as much as you can, because they actually lower your blood pressure, they make you feel better, and they do. So that's great.
So how large is the donkey? Is it a miniature donkey?
I don't think she's meant to be a miniature donkey, but she hasn't grown very much. Her name is Peaches, and she is the champion for the horses, because coyotes come through this area, and she goes after them. The trouble is she can't tell the difference between a dog and a coyote, so she goes after the dog too.
That's hilarious.
I know. Then I came to Denver, and but very soon after went to Belize and fell madly in love with the people of Belize and the countryside, and it's just environmentally pristine, jungle, reefs, etc. But it was the openness and naturalness of the people that I loved. And I knew, because I'd been asked to go there by an English oil man, I knew that if we were to find oil, it had to be done with and for and very carefully, holistically for the people. However, myself and my Belizean partner, a big, tall, black basketball player from Belize, we both wanted to make a difference for the people. And we tried everything. We did the conventional things like shooting seismic, looking at wells, geology, everything. And we couldn't. And everybody would say, you're wasting your time. There are 50 dry holes. And there's no chance. You know, the majors, Shell, BP, Mobil, ConocoPhillips, everybody had been in there and declared there was no oil in Belize. But Mike and I, we knew it in our gut. You know, the gut feel where you know you're in the right place. And I've been sort of a great one for trusting that. And that's another aspect of a pioneer, Susan, just to go back to your original question. Anyway, I had been involved very early days at the International Pavilion at the APG. And because of its success, I was asked, how did you do it? How did you have an idea and visualize it, and then it happened? Because I invited basically the energy world to Denver. And it was still is a great success. But I realized that I didn't know about how our mind works. I knew about the earth. I love geology. I love being outside. But I did not know a key fundamental. What makes a Nelson Mandela go for it and see a vision? And what makes a Gandhi or even someone like a Richard Branson? And others are riddled with doubt. And in fact, in this time frame, in this lockdown, we're finding people who are almost locked onto some of the media, so much so that they're spiraling into fear. And so I made it my business to understand how the mind works. Was this a key component, not just the understanding of the earth, but actually what was our role, our thinking role in and on this planet? And so that was the key turning point. In 2002, I went along to a training program. It was called Educo, the Educo Seminar. And it was about understanding the mind and its full capacity. And that was absolutely the most important thing I've done in my whole life.
That sounds fascinating.
It's absolutely, yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. I'll tell you a bit about it, actually.
Oh, good.
Mike Usher and I went along, and actually some of the other geologists and team members went along to this seminar to decide, how do we find out? Because it was only 2 weeks. How do we find out about this? And I had done quite a lot of research on the whole understanding of the mind, even right back to Socrates, know thyself. But I wondered who was really getting to grips with this. And then, of course, Susan, as you know, a famous geologist, Wallace Pratt, said, oil is found in the mind. And I said, I think he's onto something. So how does this work? How does our thinking process actually work? And so we went along in January 2002, and it was such a clear set of steps and literally a drawing out of our energy, our visionary capacity. Because I was a wee geologist from Belfast. Who would I be to think I could find oil more than Shell, BP, Mobil, or anybody else? And of course I had doubts, but I didn't. They were in my unconscious. So when I learned the role of the conscious mind and the unconscious, and how important it is to actually understand your fully open mind and how to access that. And on that seminar, I learned a key part of it, which is deep, deep attention. So deep that you're actually not even conscious of it. And that imprinting goes on to your unconscious. That's really how, for instance, Nelson Mandela got the win in the rugby to bring the end to apartheid. But what I really wanted, and I think this was a question that you had, Susan, I had felt from a young age that there was, in fact, I even thought we all felt that we had to make a difference in this world for each other. We were actually cells together. And so when I understood the working of my own mind, of course, that was to understand the workings of humanity's mind, and realizing how doubts, fears, etc., and division create the wars that we have. And when I was actually, it was like being on a field trip, on a geology field trip. You actually saw and felt and were this, what would I say, this energized, opened person. It was a happening on the trip, on the seminar. And about 4 days into it, I knew that I had, in a way, brought forward a capacity that I'd only dreamt of. And I went straight to Belize, and a group of us formed Belize Natural Energy. And Mike Usher, who was the Belizean amongst us, died suddenly.
Oh no!
So I was determined to go on. I know it was like how could this be? And I named the first well after him, the Mike Usher #1.
Oh, that's wonderful.
The very first one, we had 500,000 acres. It was about 20% of the whole of Belize, but we'd only raised enough to drill 2 wells.
That's amazing.
Well, they would know we were like a donkey in a horse race without a chance. I needed a And so, anyway, I was more determined, but we started to drill in 2005. And on the 24th of June, in the very first well named after Mike, the Mike Usher #1, we hit the very first oil in Belize. And it gushed out, the Mike Usher gusher. So light, by the way. It's 40-degree gravity. It goes straight into the generators without refining, which is very because we don't have a refinery.
Wow! Wow!
We found so much. We drilled Mike Usher number 1, Mike Usher number 2, Mike Usher number 3, Mike Usher number 4, etc. We found so much that we actually export about 70% of it out into, actually, the United States, to Rotterdam, to the Panama Canal, all over the world, because it's the icing on the cake and it upgrades all the Mayan crudes.
Interesting.
But here's the magic. And actually, I have a little storybook. Let me jump up quickly. A little storybook called The Magic in You. And it was written about Mike Usher. Because we're probably the only oil company where they've written a children's book about it. We realized that we had discovered the oil on the exact day, the exact anniversary of Mike's death 1 year later.
Interesting.
He died on the 24th of 2004. And I just got a shiver. It was like being hit over the head with a plank, saying, now if you don't believe that piece of God inside you, you know what I mean? It was a coming together of, a lovely coming together of science and spirit and everything in one for a whole country. And that's why I'm delighted you've invited me on, because I love to tell the story, because everybody's got this capacity inside them to follow their dreams and to understand those steps and to be all they can be.
And you said it right earlier, when the biggest thing that really separates any of us is fear. If people weren't so afraid of everything, they'd be much, much more successful and happy and everything else. If you look at people who have a lot of power, they're usually very unhappy because they're afraid of losing the power. It's just very interesting, and it doesn't take that much to be happy. And no, and if, like I said, if the whole world just chilled out a little bit, got happier, thought about life, and like you said, there's one thing that I gather you do, and that's you probably lead a pretty congruent life. In other words, you can't fake happiness, and you can't fake what you believe and what you are and how things happen to you. That's congruence. Things work, and they work out well for a reason. But that is really a cool story. It's kind of prophetic too, which is nice.
Rick, what I love about it is, yes, it's real, it's true, and it's moved and changed and transformed the whole country. But what I was really wanting, congruently, to use that word, is for anyone to be able to go to that same Educo seminar and, let's just say, unveil their dreams and potential, so that it's no longer just the random geniuses of the world, whether it be an Albert Einstein or a Mandela, so that everybody, and just to reinforce that, we send all of our BNE people, from the CEO of Belize Natural Energy, and there's been up to nearly 200 people working in BNE, to Andelina, who's one of the janitors. And I got to tell you, she's a little Mayan lady, and she's feisty. And she came to me and she said, that seminar, that Educo seminar everybody goes to, can I go? And I said, of course, let's do it. And she came back and got her whole team lined up, because we were expecting the leaders from the UAE to come and visit, because we've done a big joint venture at the United Nations. And she had everything shone from the floor to the handles, and her whole team were so proud, because they were the leaders of BNE. They were the face of BNE. And so I was praising them and everything. And then I went to walk away and thank them. She said, no, that's not all. I went to my family in southern Belize, and I told them. And she now knew the power of a program, how her mind worked. And I told them about the cacao plantation that we were to have as a family. And this is someone who had never really thought she could be anything. So it's not just fear, it's self-doubt. It's and sometimes it happens and gets imprinted, and we don't even realize it until we've got that freedom of spirit.
Well, it's interesting. There's a lot of programming that happens from the age of very little all the way on up, which kind
Yeah.
of programs you to not be happy, not do this, be a failure, obey orders, do this, comply. And a lot of people never get out of that. I remember many times I've worked late at night, especially when I was in IT, because there's always some job running or something that you have to do, or just keep an eye on things, or you're just catching up. And many times I ran into the cleaning crews at night, and almost every time they go, "Well, we're just the cleaning people." I go, "Oh, no, 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 you're not just the cleaning people. Without you, this place would be disgusting. You guys
Yeah.
make it nice, habitable, beautiful. When we walk in the morning, people
Yes, they,
assume it just clean by itself. No, that's the work you guys do. Don't think for a moment you're just the cleaning person. You are much more than that." And they look at you. I never thought of that. I go, well, start thinking about it, because that's what you do. You're creating a very beautiful environment for us to come in and just assume it's always clean. It's always
Wow.
but
nice.
here's
And
another,
yeah.
yeah. Well, and another thought too. Okay, so two things that really come to mind when you were telling Susan. First, I couldn't help but think of the Buddhist thought and how it migrated into like transcendentalism in the 19th century. And then in the 20th century, people like Gurdjieff or Jean
Hmm.
Toomer that focused on the unity of everything and the fact that everyone is the same. We all share in this common sort of energy field. And then the other thing that fascinates me is that it happened in Belize, what you're talking about. And I remember reading a book by a Mayan poet who was writing in, I think, in she's a politician, but she was talking about the Mayan idea of animism, that even inanimate objects can move through speaking, and that it's the power of the mind that even like it's almost like Fantasia, broom, move, sweep for me, help me sweep, and it's that idea that things can work in concert and they're all unified that really fascinates me. And it just seems to be coming together in the Educo philosophy
And maybe
with even
to take one step further, there's been many people philosophizing in fascinating ways, like William James, the famous psychologist,
oh
American psychologist. Uh, but the key is results.
Hmm.
You got to be able to line up and see it and act. You got to act. Otherwise, you got to do it. Because then, if you don't, you'll never know if it actually really works. The essence of the partnership with life within yourself and that energy, that's the real energy business.
Well, it's
That's
interesting, because what you were talking about is how you had that feeling and you knew it was there. Well, there's also that other component of the brain that you obviously have, and that's intention. You can have all the feelings, but if you don't have the intention to look for it, it'll never happen. You have that intention, that desire to find it and not
I,
give up.
I think everybody's born with um, an amazing capacity,
Hmm.
whether you call it intention, love, happiness, bliss, unity. I think we're all born with it. It just gets diluted through this imprinting, like an onion. If you sliced an onion in two, that little lovely white bit in the middle is our essence, our true nature, our spirit. And all those other layers are the things that are imprinted on us,
Hmm.
you know, that we don't realize. It's a missing piece of our education. And so when I went to this course in 2002, and I've been going as often as I can over the last 18 years, because as Susan alluded to, there's movement, there's energy, and it's time. It's time because the planet has got to, whether you call it climate change or you call it war or you call it greed, we need to change. We need to find a new model to come together and be that being we were born to be.
This is so great. And I really like the focus on results. Because at this point in time, so many people are paralyzed and they can't envision where the opportunities are coming, and they don't have a sense of how they're going to come in stages. And if we can just help ourselves open our eyes, and as you say, not have fear.
Yes, well, open your eyes is that letting out of the visionary capacity, because then you're imprinting it on your clean sheet, clean sheet of an unconscious. In fact, Dr. Tony Quinn, who pioneered this whole course, has dedicated his life to this study. But you said it, Susan, the results are the key. He is a practical gentleman who is focused on results. And when we went to the United Nations on the 70th anniversary and signed a huge contract based on the Educo Educational System to do the joint venture between the UAE and Belize, and when we won the Getenergy Award for making the most empowering difference in a country, well then, those are results that can be measured, that are measured. Oh, I've got one other exciting one for you. The chief of police came up to me and he said, I know that B&E is formed on the Educo mind technology. How do I get to that seminar? Because I want to understand how the criminal mind works.
They're very results oriented.
Yeah, well, he wanted to stop it. He wanted to find out if he could get to a young person and stop the criminal mind forming.
Right.
You know what I mean? He wanted to understand how the mind works in the first place. He got back from the seminar, it was about 2 years ago now, and reduced crime in the capital city by 52% in the first year. I mean, it really works. So you'll just have to, the next broadcast in Belize.
Absolutely. Well, so one of the things that I'm thinking about too, like right now we're looking at pandemic and the changes. And one of the things I've been hearing a lot about is that countries are now going to try to restore some of the manufacturing, not eliminate totally globalization, but instead of the world being flat, it's a little bit bumpy. And so the idea of the cheapest and just in time has changed to the idea of eliminating risk and having secure supplies. So anyway, it means all sorts of opportunities for manufacturing, and the fact that so much is stuck in ports and supply chain is broken means that a lot of these manufacturing ventures will have almost no competition in the next 18 to 24 months. And you can see that even in like masks. You think about when on Earth can you think of when a hand-sewn cloth surgical mask with a coffee filter was desired by anybody? But a lot of people wanted it because there was nothing. And so if we can envision where those needs are and those pain points are, there's going to be so much opportunity for people, and all the money that's been pulled out of the stock market that's sitting on the side, bound up in gold or in cash, is wanting to grow, and it'll go in there. But we just need to help people see where those opportunities are.
Susan, I so agree. In fact, that article in Forbes about B&E and Belize, and I coined a phrase, not just think outside the box, but think outside the barrel.
I love that.
It really is, because we find paraffin in our oil, and paraffin wax is actually the substrate that you rub on Vaseline petroleum jelly for your baby's bottoms, and lipstick and hair gel and everything. So we've started to look at an experiment with a line called Maya Mountain Magic, a line of cosmetics and spa products coming out from a gift from God, which is out of the well, actually. And, even the briny water could be put into salt scrubs and bath salts.
I love it.
So it's exactly to your point. I think necessity
and if it has
is
arsenic, and if it has natural arsenic in it, it can be rat poison.
Well, very good. We got to watch we don't get them mixed up. I don't think there's Arctic, but there is cobalt, which of course is another industry, which is the batteries.
Hmm.
Oh, right. Yeah. And lithium.
And lithium, both is, we've had our water tested. And so there's a group here in Colorado actually working on the value chain coming out of brine waters in wells. Isn't it cool? Just what you're saying.
Super cool. I love it.
Well, believe it or not, we are out of time. But we'd love to have you back on and talk a little bit more about Educo and some of the things that you've learned there. And are they worldwide, or is it strictly in one location, Educo?
It's usually in two main locations. In the summer, it's usually in Monte Carlo, and we're not sure this year, of course. But and then the other times, it's usually in the Bahamas, and it's where Dr. Dooku has. He lives in the Bahamas, so
interesting.
That's one of them.
Sounds like a great program.
It's an amazing program. You both would love it, actually. Just hearing your questions.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's fun. Well, definitely, Susan, we'd love to have you back on and talk a little bit more about. I think we're just touching the top of it right now. And by the way, you do have a very jubilant and contagious personality, so thanks. We appreciate that. I feel
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
that was great. My delight.
Yeah.
Oh, very inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Very inspiring. And I just really hope that a lot of people, I'm going to share this, and just really am excited that so many people will have the chance to hear this message and hopefully dig deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're deeper within.
Yep.
Nice.
That sounds great. Well, anyway, thank you for coming on. If you're watching the show, please subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. I don't know why, but just give us a thumbs up. And if you have any comments or questions for Susan, either Susan, just put them down on the notes below, and we'll make sure they get them. So have a good one, everyone. Enjoy your coming weekend, and we'll see you next week on Life Edge. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan.